Welcome back to Remarks with Republicans. Today I'm joined by Tim Bass. We talk about his journey, his values, and why he believes getting involved matters. You won't want to miss this conversation, so let's dive on in.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3,
Yeah. Whoa, yeah.
Remarks with Republicans is starting right now. For viewers meeting you for the first time, who is Tim Bass? What inspired your career in law?
Well, my name is Tim Bass. I grew up in Schuyler County in Rushville. My father was a United Methodist minister and my mother was a school teacher. My grandparents on my mother's side were born and raised in Cooperstown in Brown County, right outside of Mount Sterling. I grew up interested in becoming a farmer and worked on farms when I was in high school and college. And I graduated from University of Illinois with a degree in agriculture, and for the first 9 years after college I worked in agriculture and community banking. That was at a time when the ag crisis was at its highest, and I was in bankruptcy court, unfortunately with a lot of our farm customers, and I wasn't really enjoying it. And I got to be friends with our bank's attorney, and I got to watch some of the criminal courts in Springfield, and I decided at that point that I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to serve the public and enforce the rule of law. And so I went back to law school in 1990 at night. I was working full-time and went back to law school at St. Louis University and graduated there in 1994. I then clerked for a U.S. Court of Appeals judge in St. Louis for a year. And then I had the honor or privilege of returning to my home, Central Illinois, as a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office in 1995. And for 30 years I served the public as a prosecutor. And my view of a prosecutor's role is to do justice, not to win, but to do justice, meaning make things right by doing it the right way. And I've had the privilege of being a prosecutor for 30 years. My wife and I have moved back home to West Central Illinois. We live in Paloma. I work in the state's attorney's office here in Adams County. The one position that has a greater obligation to seek justice than a prosecutor is a judge. So I've been asked by friends and colleagues and people throughout the community if I would consider running for judge, and so I decided that I would seek that honor and privilege.
What experiences in your life or career led you to pursue a judgeship in Adams County?
Well, as I said, throughout my career as an assistant U.S. attorney in the Central District of Illinois, West Central Illinois, Adams County, and the other counties that make up the 8th Judicial Circuit are part of the Central District. And so I've had the honor and privilege throughout my career to serve the people of West Central Illinois. And then, as I said, in talking with people in all of the counties, they asked me to consider moving back to West Central Illinois, my home, and running for judge. And in my view, is our Constitution provides that the people should choose their judges by their votes, and I'm just so honored and privileged by having the opportunity to run for judge in my home community in West Central Illinois.
What do you believe qualifies you to serve as judge?
Well, the three things that I believe qualify me and make me the most qualified to serve as West Central Illinois, the 8th Judicial Circuit's next circuit judge, are my experience, 30 years of experience serving West Central Illinois, my record of fairness. When I was in law school, my hero, or one person I looked up to, is a man by the name of Vincent Bugliosi. And he prosecuted Charles Manson, the mass murderer from California. And his record in convictions was 100 and 0. And so I looked up to that. But when I started as a prosecutor myself, I learned that our job as prosecutors is not to win, but to do justice, to try to make things right by doing it the right way. And my record in trials, I've had over 100 of them, is 101. I've lost one. And the one case I lost, I had to make a decision whether I was going to call the daughters, the two young daughters of the defendant that was on trial, who had provided one of his daughters with a large amount of drugs to store in her backpack at school, and the daughter was the drugs were found in the daughter's backpack, and her father was charged and went to trial. And I had to make the decision: am I going to call one or both of these daughters to testify against their dad? And I decided not to. That I was not going to subject those two young girls to any more abuse or neglect than what they'd experienced in their lives. So I didn't call them, and the defendant was acquitted by the jury in that case. And so to me, that was an example of justice, trying to make things right by doing it the right way and being fair. So I have a record of fairness. And then lastly, this election that's coming up next March 17th is in the Republican primary. And I'm a conservative Republican. Conservative first, because that's a personal characteristic, that's a value you hold. Republican is just a political party that I believe happens to reflect conservative values. I've been a lifelong conservative. I'm not here pretending to be someone I'm not, just so I can get elected. So the three words that best describe me and are on my campaign information are experience, fairness, and conservatism.
Many voters don't fully understand what a judge does day to day. How would you explain the role in simple terms?
Well, a judge, in its simplest term, he or she presides over all the cases that come into the court system, whether that be on the civil side, like family court. One of the busiest dockets that we call, as we call them, is family court, where people are before the court for divorce, and the judge decides things like child custody and division of property. But a judge also oversees all the other civil cases, contract disputes, property disputes. When people file lawsuits, they file lawsuits with the court, and then the judge is the person that is obligated to apply the law fairly and impartially. And a judge is also the person that presides over criminal cases. When a person is charged with a crime, they have an absolute right to a trial in front of his or her peers. And so a large part of what a judge does, that's presiding over criminal cases, is preside over trials, and a judge is responsible for, if a person's convicted of a crime, a judge is responsible for applying the law and determining what punishment is appropriate in that particular case. So in its simplest terms, the judge is responsible for overseeing the entire court system, and he or she is obligated to do so fairly and impartially in enforcing the law.
What do you see as the most important responsibility of a judge in Adams County?
Well, that's an easy one. The most important responsibility of a judge is to follow the law, not make law from the bench, but to follow the law, and to do so fairly and impartially. That's what my career has been all about, fairness and seeking justice. And as I've said many times since this campaign began, unlike criminal defense attorneys, and my opponent that's his experience, unlike private attorneys, many of whom are my good friends and for whom I have a lot of respect. But unlike those individuals, a prosecutor's job is to do justice. And the only person that has a greater obligation to seek justice is a judge. So a judge's sole obligation is to follow the law, to decide cases fairly and impartially, and being faithful to his oath to follow the Constitution and the laws of Illinois.
How do you approach fairness and impartiality and consistency in decision making?
Well, I do so, and I've done so as a prosecutor my entire career. That it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is. You are a citizen, you're a human being, you're a citizen of the United States, you're a citizen of Illinois, and you have an absolute right to fairness. You have an absolute right to have all of your natural rights and your constitutional and statutory rights to be applied to you regardless of who you are and where you came from. And I've tried to do that my entire career as a prosecutor. Don't make decisions. I haven't made decisions in one case. Have I made decisions based on anything other than what I believed was fair on behalf of the people, consistent with my obligations as a prosecutor and as a lawyer. And I have no doubt that if I were honored by the people of the 8th Judicial Circuit to be their next circuit judge, that I would be faithful to my oath, be faithful to the Constitution, and in all cases be fair and impartial.
How has your legal career prepared you for the bench?
Well, as I said, my experience. I have 30 years of experience in being a prosecutor. And a prosecutor, people may not know, but a prosecutor uniquely exercises quasi-judicial duties. And by that I mean we have to make decisions on what cases to charge, what cases not to charge. Is there sufficient evidence here to subject this person to a criminal accusation? We have to make decisions the conduct of law enforcement. Was the conduct of law enforcement in investigating this case, was it done fairly and properly? And we have to make decisions on what types of plea resolutions that we offer defendants. We have to make decisions about what type of sentencing recommendations that we would make to the judge if the person is convicted. So all of those kinds of things are similar to what a judge does. And so 30 years of making those decisions in a fair and impartial way, I think has best prepared me if I were honored to be a judge.
Can you share a moment or case that shaped how you view justice and public service?
Well, the one case that comes to mind is what I described a little earlier. Just a little bit more about that case. The man that was charged in that case, he'd just gotten out of prison, and his two daughters, at 12 and 11, they'd been in and out of foster homes. They'd been sexually and physically abused, and once he got out of prison, he reunited with his two daughters. But he decided to, he was involved in drug trafficking, and he told his daughter that he was going to place a large amount of crack cocaine in her backpack and sent her off to school. When the young girl and her younger sister got to school, the principal of the school found the drugs in her backpack. And the principal directed the young girl to call her father to come get her. The principal at that time did not know that the father had put the drugs inside the backpack. And so the young girl called her father, and the school secretary heard the phone call and heard the young girl tell her father that they'd found it. She said they found it, and asked her father to come get her. And when her father showed up at school, he saw the young girl and the principal walking down the hallway with the empty backpack, and he turned around and fled the school. So as I mentioned earlier, the case went to trial, and I had to decide whether I was going to call the young girl and her younger sister to testify against their father, because they were eyewitnesses to what had happened. Yep. And I decided that I was not going to subject them to any more abuse than what they had experienced in their lives at that point. And I quickly decided that I wasn't going to call them as witnesses. And the jury ended up acquitting the person, which was disappointing, but was a result I had the respect for, because that's our process. Fortunately, the government, prosecutor, defense attorney doesn't get to decide whether a person is guilty or not guilty. That falls with the responsibility of 12 jurors. And so to me, that was an example, the best example in my career of fairness and justice. And again, justice in my view is trying to make things right by doing it the right way. So that's the best case example I can think of in my
If elected, what strengths or perspective will you bring that you believe Adams County needs right now?
Well, I think the best qualities that I bring is, as I've said, are my experience, my record of fairness, and my conservative values. Because I believe that we candidates ought to reflect the values of the people that we're asking to vote for us. That's not political. To me, that's just saying who we are and what we believe in. One of the greatest honors of my life, in addition to having the privilege of serving the people of West Central Illinois, is the overwhelming support that my wife Nancy and I have received from our home community. I want to win this election. I have ambition, but I have earned the trust and respect of the people, beginning with law enforcement, but beginning with the people throughout this circuit. Adams County and the other counties has been an equally rewarding experience in my life. So I hope to bring that experience, that record of fairness, those conservative values. When I say conservative, to me that means I'm in favor of, and I've always believed in, individual rights, pro-family, pro-Second Amendment. I exercise that right. The Second Amendment, there's a reason why that is second in our Bill of Rights to the most important one, First Amendment. One of the main issues that's facing Illinois right now is the Safety Act. And that is a very bad law that was enacted a couple of years ago that restricts the ability of judges to detain violent offenders pre-trial. My opponent, Mr. Pratt, is in favor of the Safety Act. I am adamantly opposed to it. But if I were elected and honored to be circuit judge, I would be obligated to follow that law regardless of my personal views, and that's what I would intend to do.
What are some of the biggest challenges facing the Adams County court system at the moment?
Well, I think like all county offices, I think budget funds, we have had limited funds for our public defenders, which are a critical part of our system of justice, that every person has a right to an attorney. So that's one area. And just back to your earlier question, which I think relates to this one, is even though I'm from West Central Illinois and I've served West Central Illinois all my career, I'm not an insider. I've never been an insider. I would bring a fresh, I think, an outside experience on a much broader scale than just Adams County, of that experience, that record of fairness, and those conservative values that I talked about, which I think Adams County and the other counties in Illinois, especially at this time, so desperately need. President Trump said last year that this was the most important election in his lifetime, and I agreed with him. But I believe this election in Illinois next year is the most important in our lifetime as Illinoisans, because we're going to be selecting a governor, we're going to be selecting two judges, one of which I'm seeking, and we're going to be selecting a new U.S. Senator. And the worst thing that I think can happen is that we elect an insider. And that's not who I am or who I ever will be.
What improvements or modernization would you like to see in the court operations?
Well, I wouldn't want to, if I were honored to be elected, I wouldn't want to impose my will right off the bat, I would want to listen, talk to my fellow judges, talk to the people that work on the courthouse and get their views on what improvements. My wife, Nancy, we worked together in the U.S. Attorney's Office for 25 years. She was a paralegal, and I learned a long time ago that the most important people in the court system, or in the office that I worked in, were the support staff. And I know the most important people that work in our court system here in Adams County and the other counties are the clerks and the support staff. So I would want to listen to them about what they think needs to be changed. But the one thing I've noticed that improvement that could be made is more modernization, more taking advantage of the technology available for filing, making the court records available online. I think that would be a major improvement to the court system in this county as well as the other counties in the circuit.
How do you believe the court system can better support victims, families, and the community?
Well, more resources. I have, when I talk about seeking justice as a prosecutor, who has that unique obligation, I think that includes fighting for public safety and fighting for crime victims. We prosecutors are the voice of the people when we prosecute cases. We're the voice of crime victims when we present the case to a jury. And we're certainly the voice of the victims when we recommend an appropriate punishment for a person who's been found guilty of a crime. So that's been a critical part of my career. In the U.S. Attorney's Office, we had a victim witness coordinator that we work closely with. And the same is true here in Adams County. We have a victim witness coordinator whose work is so crucial to what we do. So I would first see what additional resources we can provide to them so that we can provide further resources to victims of crime.
Where do you see opportunities for greater efficiency or transparency within the judicial process?
Well, I think technology, enhancing technology and making court records more available to the public is one thing. I know in the state system, they often choose to allow cameras into the courtroom. In the federal system, that was never allowed. And for good reason, in my view, because that tends, in some cases, and I use the O.J. Simpson case as an example, it tends to convert the justice system into a theatrical venue. So I would be very cautious and concerned about having cameras in the courtroom because there's a real risk to justice doing things the right way if you put cameras inside the courtroom. But I think technology making records more available to the public and encouraging the public that if they're interested in a particular case, the courtrooms are always public. People can come and watch, and I would encourage people to do that because just as a young prosecutor has a much different perspective, a much more educated perspective after he or she has done their first trial, I think the public they have a much more educated view of their court system if they come and watch it.
How would you describe your judicial philosophy to voters who want to understand how you interpret the law?
Well, my judicial philosophy begins with the oath of judges to follow the law, not make law. In the past 4 years especially, I think we've had a real exposure to judges who have chosen to go beyond their oaths to follow the law and to make it from the bench. That is antithetical to me to a judge's role. And how I would approach my decision making as a judge would be first to follow my oath to apply the law, not make it. Study the law and make sure that I'm the most informed about the law before I make a decision, and to follow precedents, which are previous cases that our higher courts have decided that interpret that law, and to follow those precedents faithfully, because again, it's not the role of a judge, especially the role of the lowest level judge, a circuit judge, to make the law. He or she, the responsibility of a circuit judge is to apply the law fairly and impartially, and that's what I would do.
Judicial races often get less attention than executive or legislative races. Why should voters care about this one?
In my view, judicial races are as important, if not more important, than executive or legislative races, and that's because judges are at the ground level of the community. Unlike the executive, the governor or the mayor, for example, in Quincy, or the city council or the Illinois legislature, the judges, as we talked about before, oversee the court system. And many people unfortunately, are not involved in the court system. Either that they had not gone through a divorce, or they've not been the subject of a lawsuit, or they've not been charged in a criminal case. I'm sure that for those people, they do know family members or friends who have some involvement with the court system. And it's absolutely critical to our system of justice that system be fair and impartial, because if it's not fair and impartial, it's illegitimate. One of the biggest the biggest challenge to me in this campaign is not my opponent, Mr. Pratt. The differences between the two of us could not be any greater. The biggest challenge is informing the voter. I know from my own experience that how many times I've walked into a voting booth on election day or a primary election day, and I look at the ballot and I don't know much about either candidate. So the biggest challenge is making voters educated or informed, so that they can make an informed decision on election day, appreciating the importance of the responsibilities of the judge that the people elect. So to me, a judicial position, and these two judicial positions that will be on the ballot next March 17th in the 8th Circuit, are just as critical as the choice that voters are going to make for their next governor and who their legislators are going to be, and their next U.S. senator.
What do you want Republican voters and all voters to consider when choosing a judge?
Well, the three things that define me: is the candidate experienced? Does the candidate have experience? Does the candidate have a record of fairness? And this is a Republican primary. Does the candidate have conservative values that are shared with the voter? I believe that a judicial position, especially a judicial position, should be earned, not appointed, not selected, not given to you based on who you know. Most things in life, and in my view, all things in professional life, are earned if they're worth having. So those three things, to me, are what I think are most important, and that's why wherever I go and what's defining me in my campaign are three words: experience, fairness, and conservative. And one of the most rewarding things about this campaign is my wife Nancy and I have received overwhelming support from Republican voters in Adams County and throughout this circuit. But beyond that, I've earned the support of people who are not Republicans. Mayor Moore, who's just elected as an independent to be the mayor for the city of Quincy. She has endorsed me and is supporting me. Prior Democratic officials for the city of Quincy are supporting me and helping with my campaign. Not because I'm pretending to be someone I'm not, but because they appreciate the experience, the record of fairness, and the values that I hold, that I would bring if I were elected circuit judge.
What message do you have for young voters who may be voting for judge for the first time?
Well, my simple message there is to become informed, so that you know when you vote on March 17th, and I hope everyone will vote. All Republicans will vote in the Republican primary on March 17th, but to become informed and to find out about us candidates. Find out there's going to be a governor's race, Republican primary for governor. Mr. Bailey is speaking here today, and his running mate, Mr. Delmer. Become informed about the candidates. As I said, we're going to be electing a legislature next fall, but there's Republican primary for Republican candidates as well next March 17th. So I think the best thing I could say is become informed. Study us, study our background, find out what we've done, what we believe in, and also who is supporting us. I'm so honored to receive, not only the support of current and past Republican officials in Adams County and across the circuit. I'm so honored to receive overwhelming support from law enforcement throughout this community. I'm also honored to receive the endorsement and support of elected officials who the people of Adams County and the other counties have already chosen. Congresswoman Miller has endorsed me. Congressman LaHood, who used to represent this part of the state, now is representing more towards the north, has endorsed me. Representative C.D. Davismeyer, who represents part of Adams County and Brown County and Pike County and Calhoun County, has endorsed me. And former Mayor Kyle Moore supported me. So I'm so honored to have that support, and it's because those people have met me, they've found out about me, and know what experience I have, my record of fairness, and my values. So that's what I would tell young voters is get involved, vote, but in voting and exercising that civic responsibility, become informed before you exercise that important right.
Most important quality in a judge.
Again, that's easy. Fairness, impartiality, and humility. That doesn't get talked about very much. It's easy to, the two most important characteristics of a judge obviously are fairness and impartiality. But to me, humility is equally important. Having the proper temperament, recognizing that a judicial position, as important as it is, it's not about you. It's not about the individual person. It's not about the status of becoming a judge. It's not about putting on a black robe. If I were elected circuit judge, I would be the same person after I was put on a black robe as I was before. That it's not about me, it's about the oath that I take, the people that I serve, and my obligation to follow the law and to apply the law in a fair and impartial manner.
Preferred courtroom style, formal or conversational?
Formal. Conversational just wouldn't work in a adversarial system that our justice system is. And I think formal also is out of respect for the court system, the people's court system. There are rules of procedure that we have to follow. And when we appear in court, when we have hearings or when we have trials, it has to be formal. And the less formal it becomes, the less respectful to the process, and the less fair and impartial result, I think, comes out of that. So certainly formal rather than conversation.
Paper files or digital files?
Both. In the federal system, we went to almost exclusively a digital filing. And that, because of technology, the federal system was able to do that. And that made access to the court system, the court dockets, the documents, very easy, very quick. But at the same time, paper filing is still necessary in certain circumstances. So I think a combination of both, more heavily towards the digital, but also recognizing that digital can't be a complete replacement for traditional paper filing.
Best legal quote or principle you live by?
Well, I haven't really thought about that, but I guess one quote that comes to mind, President Lincoln said, to paraphrase him, I think he said that to find out about a man's character, give him power. And I'm running for a position not to seek power, but to seek the honor and privilege of continuing to serve the people of Illinois, of Central Illinois, West Central Illinois, that I have had the honor and privilege of serving for 30 years, but to do so not as a prosecutor, but as a judge who has the ultimate obligation to seek justice.